Reed Fallon hadn't spoken to his mother in 15 years. She thought he was still angry about his father's death. She thought the estrangement was her fault. What she didn't know was that Reed had been living 200 miles away in the same state, riding past her town dozens of times, too broken by guilt to stop. And she certainly didn't know that the night everything changed, the night a storm stranded his motorcycle club in Willow Creek, he'd knocked on a stranger's door 3 blocks from his mother's house. The woman who answered that door was drowning. Single mother, failing business, sick child, empty bank account. Nia Parker was 48 hours from losing everything. Reed Fallon was 48 hours from accidentally reuniting with the mother he'd abandoned. Neither of them knew that opening that door would force them both to face the secrets they'd been running from. Or that by morning, a small act of desperate kindness would set off a chain of events that would bring 1,000 bikers to a forgotten town and expose truths that had been buried for over a decade. The rain came down like bullets that October night, each drop hammering against the tin roof of the Willow Spoon with such fury that Nia Parker could barely hear herself think. She stood behind the counter of her failing diner, staring at the eviction notice in her trembling hands, when the roar of engines cut through the storm like thunder made of steel and gasoline. 20 motorcycles, maybe more. Their headlights swept across her rain-streaked windows, turning her small diner into a lighthouse in the darkness. Nia's heart seized in her chest. "Mama, what's that sound?" Eli's small voice came from the back room where he was supposed to be sleeping. At 6 years old, her son was too thin, too pale, his chronic asthma making every breath a small victory she celebrated privately. "Nothing, baby, just a storm." But even as she said it, the engines cut off one by one, and the silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the noise had been. Heavy boots splashed through puddles, leather creaked, low voices murmured in the downpour. Then came the knock. 3 deliberate strikes against the door that made Nia's whole body go rigid with fear. She looked down at Eli, who had emerged from the back room wrapped in his Superman blanket, his inhaler clutched in one small fist like a talisman against the monsters he believed lived in the dark. The inhaler was nearly empty. She'd been rationing the last few puffs for 3 days, unable to afford the refill until Friday's paycheck came through. The knock came again, more insistent. "Please," a man's voice called through the door, rough but not unkind. "We need help. The storm's getting worse and we've got nowhere else to go." Nia's mind raced through every horror story she had ever heard about motorcycle gangs. The news reports, the movies, the warnings from Mrs. Whitfield next door about the kind of people who rode in packs, like wild animals. But then she thought about her own mother, dead now 5 years, whose voice still echoed in her memory during moments like these. When someone needs help, you help them. That's not being foolish, that's being human. She unlocked the door. The man who stood there was soaked to the bone, water streaming from his leather jacket and dripping from the grey streaks in his dark hair. His face was weathered and lined, but his eyes were gentle as they met hers. Behind him, in the rain, she could see at least 20 others waiting in the downpour, their motorcycles lined up like metal soldiers along the empty street. "I'm Reed," he said simply. "Reed Fallon. We're part of a group called the Iron Falcons. We were heading north for a charity run when the storm hit. Roads are flooded. We need somewhere to wait it out." Nia looked past him at the others, men and women, young and old, all watching her with expressions that ranged from hopeful to desperate. One woman was shivering so violently her teeth chattered audibly even from 15 feet away. "How many?" Nia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 23 total. I know that's a lot. We can pay for the space. We just need to get out of this weather before someone gets hurt." Nia thought about the eviction notice on her counter, the $217 in her bank account, the empty inhaler in her son's hand, The diner that would close in 2 weeks no matter what she did. What did she have left to lose? "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "All of you." They filed in like a strange parade, dripping water across her worn linoleum floor, their heavy boots leaving muddy prints that would take hours to clean. But as they entered, something unexpected happened. They were quiet, respectful. Several of them immediately grabbed napkins and began wiping up the water they had tracked in. "Mom, where would you like us?" asked a massive man with a grey beard and kind eyes. "We don't want to make a mess." "Anywhere is fine," Nia replied, still half convinced this was some elaborate setup for a robbery. But robbery was the furthest thing from their minds. Within minutes, they had organized themselves with military precision. The women claimed the booth seats, wrapping themselves in jackets and helping each other with wet hair. The men took the counter stools and floor space, careful not to crowd anyone. Reed approached the counter where Nia stood frozen, unsure what to do next. "You have coffee?" "Yes, I can make some." "We'd appreciate that. And whatever food you can spare. We'll pay full price for everything." As Nia moved to start the coffee maker, she felt a small hand grab her shirt. Eli was staring up at the strangers with wide eyes, his inhaler still clutched tight. One of the bikers, a younger man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, noticed the boy. He reached into his leather jacket slowly, watching Nia for permission, and pulled out a chocolate bar. "Hey, little man, you like chocolate?" Eli looked at his mother. Nia nodded slowly, and Eli took the chocolate with shy reverence. "Thank you," he whispered. "What's your name?" the biker asked, crouching down to Eli's level. "Eli." "That's a strong name. I'm Marcus. Nice to meet you, Eli." The coffee machine gurgled to life, filling the diner with a rich aroma that seemed to ease some of the tension. Nia began pulling out what food she had. Day-old bread, soup that needed reheating, some leftover meatloaf. It wasn't much, but it was what she could offer. "This is more than enough," Reed said when she explained apologetically. "You're being generous when you didn't have to be. That means something." As the storm raged outside, the diner slowly transformed from a space of fear into something warmer. The bikers shared stories in low voices. One woman named Tess helped Nia in the kitchen without being asked, her movements efficient and practiced. "You've worked in restaurants before," Nia observed. 20 years, Tess replied. "Before life took some turns I didn't expect." She paused, her hand stilling over the bread she was slicing. "I had a daughter once, would have been about your boy's age now." Nia heard the past tense and understood what Tess wasn't saying. "I'm sorry." "Thank you. It's why I ride now. Being on the road, helping people, it makes the loss hurt a little less some days." Tess looked at Eli, who was showing Marcus his inhaler and explaining very seriously how it helped him breathe. "You hold onto that boy tight. The world tries to take everything good away from us if we're not careful." Around midnight, Eli started wheezing. The sound was soft at first, but Nia recognized it immediately. She rushed to him, grabbing the inhaler, but when she pressed it, only the faintest puff of medication came out. Empty. "No, no, no," she whispered frantically, shaking the inhaler as if that would somehow refill it. Eli's breathing grew more labored. His small chest heaved with the effort of pulling in air. Panic clawed at Nia's throat. Reed was beside her in an instant. "What does he need?" "His inhaler's empty. I don't have a refill. The pharmacy won't be open until morning and I can't afford one anyway until Friday." "Marcus!" Reed called sharply. "Get the emergency kit from my bike. Now." Marcus was out the door before the sentence ended, returning moments later with a first aid kit that looked more comprehensive than anything Nia had ever seen. Reed pulled out a small device she didn't recognize. "I've got a nebulizer here. It's not as good as his inhaler, but it'll help open his airways until we can get him proper medication." His hands were steady and sure as he set up the machine. My nephew has asthma. I learned to carry this after a scare a few years back. Within minutes, Eli was breathing easier, the nebulizer humming as it delivered medication into his small lungs. Nia felt tears streaming down her face. Tears she hadn't even realized she was crying. "Thank you," she choked out. "Thank you so much." Reed squeezed her shoulder gently. "You opened your door to us. This is the least we can do." As the night wore on, Nia learned more about the Iron Falcons. They weren't a gang. They were a veterans motorcycle club, formed by men and women who had served their country and returned home to find civilian life didn't quite fit anymore. They rode together, raised money for charity, and helped communities that reminded them of the ones they had left behind when they deployed. "We were heading to Riverside," Reed explained as they shared coffee in the early morning hours. "There's a children's hospital there. We do a toy run every year, bring bikes and presents, put smiles on kids' faces." "That's beautiful," Nia said softly. "It's necessary. Those kids, they're fighting battles nobody should have to fight. Least we can do is show them they're not alone." He looked around the diner, at the peeling paint and the flickering lights. "Kind of like what you're doing here, fighting a battle nobody should have to fight alone." Nia wanted to tell him it was different, that she was just trying to survive, not save the world. But before she could speak, the diner door opened and Mrs. Whitfield stood there in her raincoat, her face twisted with disapproval. "Nia Parker, what in God's name is happening here?" the elderly woman demanded. "I've been watching these people through my window all night. You've invited criminals into our neighborhood?" "Mrs. Whitfield, they needed help," Nia started, but the older woman cut her off. "Help? You don't know these people. They could rob you blind. They could hurt that boy of yours. And here you are serving them coffee like they're guests at a tea party." Reed stood slowly, his presence commanding without being threatening. "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but I assure you we mean no harm to anyone in this town. We're just waiting for the storm to pass. I don't care what you mean to do. I know your type. My late husband was sheriff for 30 years, and he dealt with motorcycle gangs all the time. Drugs, violence, chaos, that's what you bring." "With respect, Mom, you don't know anything about us," Tess said quietly from across the room. "We're veterans. We served this country. Most of us have lost friends, family, pieces of ourselves in that service. We ride together because it's the only thing that makes sense anymore." Mrs. Whitfield's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't believe you, and I'm calling the police to have you removed from this establishment." "Please don't," Nia interjected, finding her voice. "Mrs. Whitfield, these people saved my son's life tonight. They've been nothing but respectful. The storm is still dangerous. Give them until morning." The older woman looked at Nia with something between pity and contempt. "You're making a mistake. Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." She turned and stalked back into the rain. But an uncomfortable silence fell over the diner. Reed returned to his seat, his jaw tight. "I'm sorry about that." "Don't apologize," Nia said. "She's been looking for reasons to judge me since I moved here. Single mother, struggling business, wrong side of the tracks. I've heard it all before." "People are quick to judge what they don't understand," Marcus said from where he sat with Eli, helping the boy build a tower out of sugar packets. "They see the leather and the bikes and they think they know our whole story." As dawn broke, the storm finally began to ease. The rain softened to a drizzle, and pale light filtered through the clouds. The bikers stirred, preparing to leave and continue their journey to Riverside. Reed handed Nia an envelope for the food and the shelter. She opened it and gasped. There was $500 inside. "This is too much." "It's exactly right. You gave us sanctuary when you had every reason to turn us away. That's worth more than money." He paused, looking around the diner with a critical eye. "Your roof is leaking pretty bad in the corner there." "I know. It's been like that for months. I can't afford to fix it right now." Reed exchanged glances with several of his fellow riders. Something unspoken passed between them. How about we take care of it before we leave? What? No, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, we're offering. Reed pulled out his phone and started making calls. What happened next would later be described by the residents of Willow Creek as somewhere between a miracle and an invasion. Reed made a single call, which turned into 5, which turned into 20. By mid-morning, more motorcycles began arriving. Dozens of them, then hundreds. The Iron Falcons had put out a call to every affiliated club within a 3-state radius. A single mother had shown kindness to their brothers and sisters. She needed help. That was all the reason they needed. By noon, Willow Creek's Main Street looked like the staging ground for the world's largest motorcycle rally. Over 1,000 bikes lined the roads, their chrome gleaming in the sun that had finally broken through the clouds. Nia stood in the doorway of her diner, holding Eli's hand, watching in complete disbelief as men and women in leather jackets swarmed her building with tools, materials, and a level of organization that would have impressed a military general. "Mama, are they all here to help us?" Eli asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "I think so, baby. I think they are." A woman with silver streaks in her hair approached, carrying a clipboard. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a contractor from Cleveland. Reed called me last night. We're going to fix this place up right. You got any special requests?" Nia felt tears building again. "I don't understand. Why would you all do this for me?" Sarah smiled. "Because Reed called us and said a woman with a sick kid and a failing business opened her door in a storm to help strangers. Said she had the kind of heart that's too rare in this world. That's all the reason we needed." The transformation began with the roof. A crew of experienced roofers swarmed the building, tearing off old shingles and replacing them with new material donated by a supplier in Pittsburgh who was a veteran himself. Others worked on the exterior, scraping away peeling paint and applying fresh coats in cheerful colors that made the Willow Spoon look alive for the first time in years. Inside, electricians rewired the flickering lights. Plumbers fixed the leaking sink that had been dripping for 6 months. Carpenters repaired the wobbly tables and built new shelves. Someone even showed up with a donation of new dishes and silverware from a restaurant supply company. The noise was overwhelming, but it was the sound of hope, of community, of people who had decided that Nia Parker's struggle mattered. As the day progressed, curious townsfolk began emerging from their homes. They had watched with suspicion that morning, but now they saw something different. They saw organization. They saw purpose. They saw a struggling business being rebuilt by people who owed it nothing but gave everything. Mr. Chen from the hardware store walked over, watching the work with amazed eyes. "Nia, what's happening here?" "I helped some people last night," she said simply, "and they wanted to return the favor. This is more than a favor. This is extraordinary." Children from the neighborhood gathered on the sidewalk, fascinated by the motorcycles and the bikers who patiently answered their questions. One rider let a little girl sit on his bike and pretend to drive while her mother watched with tears in her eyes. "I've been teaching my daughter to fear people like this," the mother admitted to Nia. "I'm ashamed of that now." By late afternoon, Mayor Davidson arrived with a news crew. He was a portly man in his 60s who rarely ventured to Nia's side of town. "Ms. Parker, I'm hearing extraordinary things about what's happening here today." "It is extraordinary," Nia agreed. "These people are angels." The mayor turned to Reed. "Sir, I'd like to extend the town's gratitude for what your organization is doing here. This is the kind of community spirit we should all aspire to." Reed shook the mayor's hand firmly. "Just doing what's right, sir. Ms. Parker showed us kindness when we needed it. We're returning the favor, that's all." As the mayor conducted interviews with the news crew, Nia noticed movement across the street. Mrs. Whitfield stood on her porch, holding a covered dish, her face working through a complicated series of emotions. Finally, the elderly woman crossed the street with slow, hesitant steps. "Miss Parker," she said stiffly, "I owe you an apology." Nia blinked in surprise. In the 3 years she had lived in Willow Creek, Mrs. Whitfield had never apologized for anything. "I spoke harshly last night. I made assumptions based on fear and prejudice rather than facts." The older woman's voice trembled. "These people have done more for you and this town in one day than the rest of us have done in years. I'm ashamed of myself." "Mrs. Whitfield, please let me finish." The elderly woman held out the covered dish. "I made you a pie. It's not much, but it's all I have to offer besides my sincere apologies." Nia took the dish, feeling the warmth of the pie through the cloth. "Thank you. That means a lot." "I had a grandson," Mrs. Whitfield said suddenly. "He died in Afghanistan 10 years ago. He was a good boy, kind and brave. When I saw those motorcycles last night, all I could think about was how he used to love bikes, how he talked about getting one when he came home." Her voice broke. "He never came home. And instead of honoring his memory by being kind to others who served, I've spent years being bitter and judgmental. I'm sorry for that." Reed had been listening quietly. He stepped forward and extended his hand. "Mom, your grandson would be proud of you for recognizing that and changing. That takes real courage." Mrs. Whitfield took his hand with trembling fingers. "Thank you, young man, and thank you for what you're doing here." As the sun began to set, the work reached its completion. The Willow Spoon had been transformed. New roof, fresh paint, working plumbing and electricity, sturdy furniture, and a new sign that gleamed in the fading light. But Reed wasn't finished. He gathered everyone in the street, all 1,000+ bikers, and the growing crowd of townspeople who had come to witness the miracle on Main Street. "We have one more surprise," he announced. Tess stepped forward, holding an envelope. "Nia, the Iron Falcons have been doing charity work for 20 years. We've helped build schools, playgrounds, and hospitals. But we've never met anyone quite like you. Someone who had so little but still opened their door to strangers." "We took a collection," Marcus added. "Every club that came today contributed. We've paid off your debt to the bank. The Willow Spoon belongs to you now, free and clear." Nia felt her knees weaken. Eli grabbed her hand tightly, sensing his mother's overwhelming emotion. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep doing what you're doing," Reed replied. "Keep being kind. Keep opening your door to people who need help. Keep showing this town what community really means." The crowd erupted in applause. Motorcycle engines revved in celebration, creating a thunderous symphony that echoed through the streets of Willow Creek. Nia was crying openly now, and she wasn't the only one. All around her, people were wiping their eyes and embracing each other. But there was one more surprise waiting. An elderly woman had pushed through the crowd, her face pale and her hand pressed to her chest. She stared at Reed with eyes that had seen too much loss. "Reed?" she whispered. "Reed Fallon?" Reed turned and the color drained from his face. "Mom?" The crowd fell silent. Mother and son stared at each other across it, 15 feet of pavement that might as well have been an ocean. Mabel Fallon was 72 years old, thin and frail, with the same gentle eyes as her son. "I heard your name," Mabel said, her voice breaking. "Someone said Reed Fallon was leading the bikers. I didn't believe it. I didn't think you'd ever come back here. Mum, Reed seemed unable to find words. "I'm sorry," Mabel continued, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "I'm sorry for the things I said when you left. I was angry and hurt. I blamed you for your father's death, when I should have been supporting you through your grief. He died because of me," Reed said, his voice raw with old pain. "If I hadn't joined the military, if I'd stayed home to help with the farm. Your father died because his heart gave out, Not because of anything you did or didn't do. I was wrong to make you carry that guilt. I spent 15 years wishing I could take back those words. Mabel took a step forward. Can you forgive a foolish old woman? Reed closed the distance between them in 3 long strides and pulled his mother into his arms. There's nothing to forgive, Mum. I should have come home sooner. I should have tried to fix things between us. You're home now, Mabel sobbed into her son's chest. That's all that matters. The reunion was met with more cheers and tears from the crowd. Nia watched the scene unfold and understood something profound. The miracle of this day wasn't just about her diner being saved. It was about broken things being mended, separated families being reunited, a community learning to look beyond surfaces and see the humanity underneath. As evening descended, someone set up grills, and the impromptu celebration became a block party. People who had been strangers that morning shared food and stories like old friends. Children played between the motorcycles, while their parents laughed and talked with the bikers who had terrified them just hours before. Marcus had taken Eli under his wing, teaching him about the different types of motorcycles and promising to bring him to a bike show when he was older. You're a tough kid, Marcus told him. Living with asthma, that's hard, but you keep fighting, right? Right, Eli agreed seriously. Mama says fighters never give up. Your mama's a smart lady. Nia found herself standing beside Reed and Mabel as the party continued around them. I still can't believe this is real, she admitted. Believe it, Reed replied. This is what happens when good people decide to help each other instead of tearing each other down. Mabel took Nia's hand. Thank you for opening your door to these people. If you hadn't, I might never have seen my son again. I just did what felt right, Nia said softly. That's the hardest thing to do in this world, Mabel responded. Doing what's right when it would be easier to do nothing. As the night wore on and the celebration continued, Nia slipped away to stand alone in her newly renovated diner. She ran her hands over the smooth counter, breathed in the smell of fresh paint, and looked at her reflection in the new windows. The frightened, desperate woman who had opened her door last night was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned that vulnerability could be its own kind of strength. The door opened behind her. Reed stepped inside, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this. Thank you. She accepted the cup gratefully. Reed, I need to ask you something. Why did you really do all this? It can't just be about me helping you through a storm. Reed was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. My daughter died 3 years ago. Leukemia. She was 8 years old. His voice was thick with grief that time hadn't fully healed. Near the end, she couldn't sleep because she was in so much pain. I used to stay up all night with her, holding her hand, telling her stories, anything to distract her from the suffering. Reed, I'm so sorry. One night, maybe a week before she passed, she asked me to promise her something. She said, Daddy, promise me you'll help people. Promise me you'll find people who are hurting and make them feel less alone. I promised her I would. He looked up at Nia, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. When I saw you last night, exhausted and scared, but still willing to help strangers, I saw what my daughter was talking about. I saw someone who needed to know she wasn't alone. Nia set down her coffee and hugged Reed tightly. Your daughter would be proud of you. I hope so. I really hope so. They stood there in the quiet diner, 2 people who had been broken by life, but refused to let that brokenness define them. Outside, the celebration continued, a testament to the power of compassion to transform not just individuals, but entire communities. The months that followed brought changes to Willow Creek that rippled outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The Willow Spoon became famous, not just locally, but regionally, as word spread about the diner that had been rebuilt by angels on motorcycles. People came from neighboring towns and cities, drawn by the story and staying for the food that Nia cooked with love and skill she hadn't known she possessed. The walls of the diner became a gallery of memories from that extraordinary day. Photographs showed the 1,000+ motorcycles lining Main Street, the bikers working together with smiles on their faces, the moment when Reed and Mabel embraced. Each image told part of a story that had become legend in Willow Creek. But the real changes ran deeper than tourism and success. The town itself had transformed. Neighbors who had lived side by side for years without speaking now gathered regularly for potlucks and community events. Mrs. Whitfield had become one of Nia's closest friends, helping out at the diner during busy shifts and teaching Eli how to bake her famous apple pies. The Iron Falcons visited monthly, bringing new members who wanted to see the place that had sparked such change. Each visit brought new projects, new connections, new proof that the bonds formed in crisis could endure through time. Reed and Mabel had reconciled completely, with Reed buying a house just outside Willow Creek so he could be near his mother. He still rode with the Iron Falcons, still organized charity runs and community service projects. But now he had something he hadn't had in 15 years. He had a home. On a crisp autumn evening 6 months after that stormy night, Nia stood on the front porch of the Willow Spoon, watching Eli play in the small park that the Iron Falcons had built behind the diner. Her son was healthier now, his asthma better controlled with medication she could finally afford. He laughed as Marcus pushed him on the swings, the sound carrying clear and sweet through the evening air. "Mama, higher," Eli called, his voice full of joy. "You got it, little man," Marcus called back, giving the swing another push. Tess appeared beside Nia, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She had moved to Willow Creek permanently, taking a job as the Willow Spoon's manager and becoming like a sister to Nia. "Beautiful evening." "The most beautiful," Nia agreed, accepting the coffee. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life now." "Believe it. You earned it." "I just opened a door." "You opened your heart," Tess corrected. "That's a lot harder." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Mayor Davidson walked by on his evening constitutional and waved cheerfully. "Evening, ladies. Excellent pot roast today, Nia." "Thank you, Mayor." The sound of motorcycles rumbled in the distance, and Nia smiled. She would know that sound anywhere now. Reed and a small group of riders appeared, their bikes gleaming in the fading light. They parked and Reed approached with his characteristic easy smile. "Evening, Nia. Evening, Tess. How's business?" "Booming," Tess replied. "We actually had to turn people away at lunch. Good problem to have." Reed nodded approvingly. "That's what I like to hear." He looked at Eli playing in the park. "How's the little man?" "Thriving. His doctor says his asthma is the best controlled it's been in years." "That's wonderful." Reed handed Nia an envelope. "I have something for you." "Reed, if this is more money." "Open it." Inside was a letter on official letterwork. Nia scanned it quickly, her eyes widening. "This is from the National Restaurant Association. They want to feature the Willow Spoon in their magazine. They want to give me an award." "Recognition for excellence in community service through business." Reed read over her shoulder. "They heard about what happened here and wanted to celebrate it. You're going to be famous, Nia." "I don't want to be famous. I just want to run my diner and take care of my son." "You can do both," Tess assured her. "And this kind of recognition could open doors for you. Maybe a cookbook, a catering business. The sky's the limit now." Nia looked around at the life she had built from the ashes of desperation. The successful diner, the loving community, the family she had found among people who had once been strangers. It all traced back to one decision made in fear and faith. to open her door when every instinct screamed to keep it locked. "You know what I've learned," she said softly. "The things that scare us the most are often the things that save us." "That's profound," Reed said with a smile. "It's true. I was terrified that night when you knocked on my door. I was sure something terrible would happen. But the terrible thing would have been turning you away. I would have missed all of this." She gestured at the thriving diner, the happy child, the friends gathered close. "I would have missed my life." As night fell completely, the small group moved inside where the diner was warm and welcoming. Nia cooked while they talked, preparing comfort food with practiced ease. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and the comfortable silences of people who knew each other well. Eli eventually grew tired and climbed into Reed's lap, his small body growing heavy with sleep. "Uncle Reed, will you tell me a story?" "What kind of story, little man?" "Tell me about the night you met Mama." Reed looked at Nia, who nodded with a smile. "Okay, well, it was a dark and stormy night, just like in the scary movies. The rain was coming down so hard we could barely see the road. We were cold and wet and lost, wondering if we'd find shelter before someone got hurt. And then you found Mama's diner," Eli prompted, knowing the story by heart, but never tiring of hearing it. "And then we found your Mama's diner. The lights were on, shining through the rain like a beacon. We knocked on the door, hoping someone would answer, but scared because we knew we looked pretty rough. And you know what happened?" "Mama opened the door," Eli said sleepily. "That's right. Your Mama opened the door when she had every reason to keep it closed. She was brave when being scared would have been easier. And because of her courage, everything changed. For us, for her, for this whole town." "Mama's a hero," Eli murmured, his eyes drifting closed. "Yes, she is," Reed agreed, meeting Nia's eyes across the room. "The best kind of hero. The kind who helps people even when it's hard." When Eli was fully asleep, Reed carried him to the small apartment above the diner where Nia and her son now lived. It was modest, but comfortable, a vast improvement from the cold, drafty house they had occupied before. Reed laid the boy gently in his bed and pulled the Superman blanket up to his chin. "Sleep well, little man," he whispered. Back downstairs, the group settled into the quiet rhythm of closing time. Tess wiped down tables while Marcus swept the floor. Reed helped Nia in the kitchen, washing dishes and talking about the next charity run the Iron Falcons were planning. "We're thinking of making Willow Creek our home base," Reed said casually. "Set up a permanent chapter here, if that's okay with you." Nia paused in her work, surprised. "Really? This town has become special to a lot of us, and you're a big part of that. Having you here, seeing what you've built, it reminds us why we do what we do." He set down the dish he was drying and looked at her seriously. "You remind us that kindness matters, that opening our hearts to people, even when it's scary, is the most important thing we can do." "I think that would be wonderful," Nia said with genuine warmth. "Having you here, all of you, it would mean a lot. Then it's settled. We'll start looking for a clubhouse tomorrow." As midnight approached and the last of the cleaning was finished, the group gathered by the door for goodbyes. Hugs were exchanged, plans were made for the next gathering, and promises to stay in touch were renewed. When they were gone and the diner was finally quiet, Nia stood alone in the space that had been transformed from a symbol of her failure into a testament to the power of community. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, desperate, alone, convinced that the world was a cold place, where kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone who understood that kindness was never a luxury. It was a necessity. It was the foundation upon which everything worthwhile was built. She turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to her apartment, where Eli slept peacefully in his room. She checked on him as she did every night, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead and adjusting his blanket. In the soft glow of his nightlight, she could see the collection of small motorcycle figurines that Marcus had given him, lined up carefully on his dresser like treasured soldiers. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Reed. "Thank you for everything. Sleep well." She typed back, "Thank you for changing our lives. See you tomorrow." Nia walked to her own bedroom, but before going to sleep, she paused at the window overlooking Main Street. The street was quiet now, empty except for the glow of streetlights and the occasional passing car. But she could still see it in her mind's eye. The 1,000 motorcycles lined up like chrome angels. The community coming together. The miracle that had begun with a simple choice to help strangers. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory one more time. "When someone needs help, you help them. That's not being foolish. That's being human." "You were right, Mama," Nia whispered to the night. "You were so right." She climbed into bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. But it was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from a full day of meaningful work, surrounded by people who cared. As sleep pulled her under, her last thought was a simple prayer of gratitude for the storm that had brought strangers to her door and transformed her life in ways she never could have imagined. The following weeks brought a steady stream of reporters and bloggers wanting to document the story of the Willow Spoon and the Iron Falcons. Nia handled the attention with grace, always making sure to emphasize that she had simply done what anyone should do when faced with people in need. But the reporters saw something more. They saw a woman who had been tested by hardship and emerged stronger, not bitter. They saw a community that had learned to look beyond appearances and prejudices. They saw hope. One particularly persistent reporter from a national magazine spent 3 days in Willow Creek, interviewing everyone connected to the story. On her last day, she sat in the Willow Spoon during the evening rush, watching Nia work the room with effortless warmth, greeting regular customers by name and making newcomers feel like family. "Miss Parker, can I ask you something?" the reporter said when Nia finally had a moment to sit down. "Do you ever regret opening your door that night, even for a moment?" Nia considered the question carefully. "No, not once. Opening that door was the scariest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the best thing. Because on the other side of that fear was everything I needed. Community, family, purpose, hope. All of it was waiting for me. I just had to be brave enough to reach for it." What would you say to other people who are struggling right now? People who feel alone and hopeless like you did. I'd tell them that they're not as alone as they think. That there are people out there who want to help, who are waiting for the chance to show kindness. And I'd tell them that sometimes you have to be the one to take the first step. Open your door, ask for help, offer help to someone else. Those small acts of courage can change everything. The reporter scribbled notes furiously. "One more question. What's next for you and the Willow Spoon?" Nia smiled, looking around her bustling diner. "More of this, serving good food, building community, maybe expanding to offer cooking classes for struggling families. The Iron Falcons have been helping me develop a program to teach people how to cook nutritious meals on a budget. We want to help other families who are where I was 6 months ago." That's beautiful. You're paying it forward. That's the only way it works. Kindness isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be shared, multiplied, passed along until it touches as many lives as possible. When the article was published a month later, it sparked a national conversation about community, compassion, and the power of small acts of kindness to transform lives. The Willow Spoon became a pilgrimage site for people seeking inspiration, hope, or simply a good meal, and a reminder that the world could still be a kind place. But perhaps the most profound change came in the form of a phone call Nia received on a Tuesday afternoon during the lunch rush. She almost didn't answer, seeing an unknown number, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Nia?" The voice was hesitant, male, vaguely familiar. "Nia, it's Jerome." Her ex-husband, the man who had abandoned her and Eli when things got difficult. Nia felt her body go rigid, old anger and hurt rising up like a wave. "What do you want, Jerome?" "I saw the article about you, about the diner, about everything that happened." He paused. "I wanted to call and say I'm sorry for leaving, for not being there when you and Eli needed me, for being a coward." Nia was silent, processing his words. Part of her wanted to hang up, to tell him it was too late for apologies. But another part, the part that had been transformed by the kindness of strangers, recognized the courage it took for him to make this call. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Because I've been running for so long, I forgot how to stand still. Reading about what you built, about how you faced your fears and came out stronger, it made me realize how much I've missed, how much I threw away." His voice broke. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm proud of you. Prouder than I have any right to be. Jerome, I appreciate the apology, I do. But Eli and I have built a life now. A good life. We have a family. I know. I'm not trying to disrupt that. I just thought maybe, if you'd be willing, I could try to be part of Eli's life again. Send child support like I should have been doing all along. Maybe visit sometimes, if you think that would be okay." Nia closed her eyes, thinking about her son. Eli deserved to know his father, even if that father had failed him in the past. People could change. She had seen it happen over and over in the months since that stormy night. Mrs. Whitfield had changed. The town had changed. She herself had changed. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "I need to talk to Eli and figure out what's best for him. But Jerome, if you're serious about this, you need to be consistent. You can't come back into his life and then disappear again when things get hard. I understand. I want to do better. I want to be better. Then prove it. Send the child support you owe. Show up when you say you will. Be the father Eli deserves." "I will. I promise." After they hung up, Nia stood holding the phone, her emotions churning. Tess noticed her distress and came over immediately. "What's wrong?" "That was Jerome. He wants to be part of Eli's life again." Tess whistled low. "That's complicated. How do you feel about it?" "Scared, angry, but also hopeful maybe? Is that crazy?" "Not crazy, human." Tess squeezed her hand. "You've learned that people can surprise you, for better and worse. Maybe Jerome is ready to surprise you in a good way. Or maybe he'll disappoint us again. Maybe. But you won't know unless you give him a chance. And if he does disappoint you, you've got a whole army of people who will help you and Eli through it." That evening, after Eli had gone to bed, Nia sat with Reed and Mabel in the quiet diner, telling them about Jerome's call. Reed listened carefully, his face thoughtful. "What does your gut tell you?" he asked when she finished. "That Eli deserves to have his father in his life if Jerome is sincere about changing. But I'm terrified of letting him back in and having him hurt us again." "Those fears are valid," Mabel said gently. "But you can set boundaries. Start slow, see if he follows through, and if he doesn't, you cut him off and move on, knowing you gave him a fair chance." "What if he hurts Eli?" "Then we'll be here to help Eli heal," Reed said firmly. "You're not alone anymore, Nia. Whatever happens with Jerome, you've got a whole community standing behind you." The reassurance helped, but the decision still weighed heavily on Nia's mind over the following days. She sought advice from Mrs. Whitfield, who surprised her with unexpected wisdom. "My late husband made many mistakes, the elderly woman said, over tea one afternoon. He drank too much, spent money we didn't have, said things he shouldn't have said. But he always came back, always tried to make amends. I could have shut him out after the first failure, but I chose to give him chances to be better. And slowly, over the years, he did become better. Not perfect, but better. You think I should let Jerome try? I think you should do what feels right for you and Eli. But don't let fear make the decision. Fear is a terrible counselor. I know that better than anyone. Nia thought about those words as she made her choice. She called Jerome back and laid out strict terms. He would send regular child support payments for 6 months before any discussion of visitation. He would attend counseling to address whatever had caused him to abandon his family. He would write letters to Eli that Nia would read first, building a relationship slowly and carefully. To her surprise, Jerome agreed to everything without argument. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it, he said. I lost my family once because I was weak. I won't make that mistake again. Time would tell if he meant it, but Nia felt a strange peace with her decision. She had extended grace while maintaining boundaries. She had been both compassionate and careful. It felt like the right balance. As autumn deepened into winter and the first anniversary of that stormy night approached, the Iron Falcons began planning a celebration. Not just for Nia and the Willow Spoon, but for the entire community of Willow Creek and all the ways it had transformed over the past year. We want to do something big, Reed explained during a planning meeting. Something that honors what this place has become and inspires other communities to follow suit. What did you have in mind? Nia asked. A festival, a whole weekend of food, music, games, and community service projects. We'll invite chapters from across the country, bring in local vendors, raise money for charity, show the world what happens when people choose kindness over fear. The idea took root and grew quickly. Every resident of Willow Creek wanted to be involved. Mrs. Whitfield volunteered to coordinate the baking competition. Mr. Chen offered to provide supplies at cost. The mayor secured permits and helped with marketing. Even Jerome, true to his word about being consistent, sent money specifically earmarked for the festival, with a note saying he wished he could be there to see what his son's mother had built. The letters he sent to Eli had been simple at first, just a few sentences about his day and questions about Eli's interests. But slowly, they had grown longer and more personal. Eli seemed to enjoy receiving them, even if he was still too young to fully understand the complicated history between his parents. Daddy sent me a letter about motorcycles, Eli told Nia one evening, his face bright with excitement. He said Uncle Reed sounds like a good man, and he's glad I have good people in my life. Nia felt tears prick her eyes. Maybe Jerome really was trying to change. Maybe redemption was possible for everyone. Not just the people in leather jackets who rode motorcycles. The weekend of the festival arrived with perfect weather, crisp and clear with brilliant blue skies. Willow Creek's main street transformed into a celebration of community that drew thousands of visitors. Motorcycle clubs from 30 states made the pilgrimage, their bikes gleaming in the sunlight. Food vendors set up booths offering everything from barbecue to Thai food. Local artisans sold crafts and artwork. Children's laughter filled the air as they played games and got their faces painted. But the heart of the festival was the service projects. Teams of volunteers fanned out across the town and neighboring communities, repairing homes for elderly residents, building wheelchair ramps, painting schools, and planting gardens. The Iron Falcons had organized it with military precision, ensuring that every person who wanted to help had something meaningful to do. Nia spent the weekend in constant motion, cooking in the Willow Spoon's kitchen alongside a team of volunteers, greeting visitors and marveling at what her small act of kindness had inspired. Everywhere she looked, she saw people choosing compassion over indifference, community over isolation, hope over despair. On Sunday evening, as the festival wound down, Reed gathered everyone in the town square for a closing ceremony. Thousands of people filled the space, their faces glowing in the light of tiki torches and street lamps. 1 year ago, Reed began, his voice carrying over the crowd, 23 cold, wet bikers knocked on a door in the middle of a storm. The woman who answered that door had every reason to turn us away. She was struggling financially, dealing with a sick child, and had been taught to fear people like us. But she chose kindness over fear. She opened her door and her heart, and in doing so, she changed everything. The crowd applauded, and Nia felt her face flush with embarrassment and pride. What happened next wasn't magic. Reed continued. It was choice. The choice to help someone who helped us. The choice to see beyond surfaces and stereotypes. The choice to build something beautiful together instead of staying divided by fear and prejudice. Every person here made those choices. And look what we've created. He gestured at the transformed town around them. Willow Creek was dying a year ago. Businesses were closing. People were moving away. The community was fractured and hopeless. Today, this town is thriving. Property values are up. New businesses are opening. Most importantly, people care about each other again. They look out for their neighbors. They help strangers. They choose kindness. Reed's eyes found Nia in the crowd. Ms. Nia Parker, would you please come up here? Nia made her way through the crowd, Eli holding tight to her hand. When she reached the makeshift stage, Reed pulled her into a warm hug before addressing the crowd again. Nia, on behalf of the Iron Falcons and every person here, I want to present you with this. He held up a beautifully framed document. This is a proclamation from the governors of 15 states, declaring you an honorary member of every Iron Falcons chapter in the country. Your family now, officially and permanently. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Nia accepted the frame with shaking hands, tears streaming freely down her face. Thank you, she managed to say into the microphone someone handed her. Thank you all so much. But I need you to understand something. I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who made a choice to help people when they needed it. Every single person here has the power to make that same choice every single day. That's the real message of this story. Kindness isn't extraordinary. It's simple. It's basic. It's something every one of us can do. And when we all choose to do it, we change the world. She looked down at Eli, who was beaming up at her with pure adoration. My son is going to grow up in a world where he knows that people take care of each other, where differences don't divide us, but make us stronger, where opening your door to a stranger isn't foolish, it's brave. That's the legacy of this past year. That's what all of you have given me and my son, a world worth living in. The applause was deafening. People were crying, hugging, celebrating not just the success of the festival, but the deeper transformation it represented. As the ceremony concluded and people began to drift away, planning for the long drive home or settling in for one more night in Willow Creek, Nia stood on the stage holding her son and looking out at the community she had helped create. Mrs. Whitfield approached, climbing the stage steps with careful dignity. My dear, I have something for you. She held out a leather-bound journal. I've been writing down stories from this past year. Every act of kindness I've witnessed, every way this town has changed. I thought you might want to keep them, to show Eli when he's older what his mother started. Nia accepted the journal with reverence. Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield. This means more than you know. Thank you, my dear, for showing an old bitter woman that it's never too late to change. As the night deepened and the festival officially ended, small groups lingered in the square, reluctant to let the magic of the weekend fade. Motorcycles lined the streets like metal guardians, their chrome catching the moonlight. Someone started playing guitar, and soon voices joined in song. the music drifting through the cool night air. Eli had fallen asleep against Nia's shoulder, exhausted by the excitement. She carried him towards home, but paused at the door of the Willow Spoon to look back at the scene one more time. Reed appeared beside her, his presence comforting and familiar. "Quite a weekend," he said softly. "Quite a year," Nia replied. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about fear, how it almost won. That night when you knocked on my door, I was so scared I could barely breathe. I had Eli in my arms and an empty inhaler in my hand, and every instinct screamed at me to keep that door locked. If I had listened to that fear, none of this would exist. But you didn't listen. No, I listened to my mother's voice instead. I listened to something deeper that told me helping people was more important than protecting myself from imagined danger." She shifted Eli's weight, and Reed reached out to help support him. "I've been thinking a lot about courage lately. I used to think courage meant not being afraid, but that's not what it is at all." "What is it?" "Courage is being terrified, and doing the right thing anyway. It's feeling every ounce of fear and choosing love instead. That's what I did that night, even though I didn't realize it at the time. I chose love over fear, and love won." Reed nodded slowly. "My daughter used to say something similar. She said being brave didn't mean nothing scared you. It meant you didn't let fear make your decisions. She was a wise little girl. She was, and she'd have loved you and Eli. Probably would have appointed herself his big sister and bossed him around constantly." They shared a smile at the thought. Somewhere in the square, the guitar music shifted to a gentler melody, something sweet and melancholy that spoke of endings and beginnings intertwined. "Reed, can I ask you something?" Nia said quietly. "Anything. Do you think we'll ever really understand why that storm brought you here? Why everything happened exactly the way it did?" Reed was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I don't know if we need to understand it. Maybe some things are meant to remain mysterious. Maybe the point isn't to understand why, but to recognize grace when it appears, and be grateful for it." Grace. I like that word. It's the right word. What happened here was grace. Unearned, unexpected, transformative grace. Nia carried Eli upstairs to bed, Reed following to help. Together they tucked the boy in, pulling his Superman blanket up to his chin and arranging his collection of motorcycle figurines on the nightstand where he could see them. Eli stirred slightly, murmuring something unintelligible, before settling back into deep sleep. "Sweet dreams, little man," Reed whispered. Back downstairs, Nia walked Reed to the door. Before he left, she hugged him tightly. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For helping me when I couldn't help myself. For being family." "Thank you for opening your door," Reed replied. "Thank you for reminding us why we do what we do. Thank you for being exactly who you are." After he left, Nia locked up and climbed the stairs one more time, checking on Eli as she always did before bed. He was sleeping peacefully, his small chest rising and falling with easy breaths that no longer carried the wheeze of struggling lungs. She pressed a kiss to his forehead and whispered, "We did it, baby. We built something beautiful." In her own bedroom, Nia opened the leather journal Mrs. Whitfield had given her and began reading the stories the elderly woman had collected. Each entry detailed another small miracle. A neighbor helping a neighbor. A stranger receiving kindness. A community choosing compassion. Page after page of proof that the transformation of Willow Creek wasn't a single miraculous event, but an ongoing choice made by hundreds of people every single day. The last entry, written just that evening, made Nia's tears flow freely. "Today, I watched a town celebrate itself. I saw people from every walk of life coming together as family. I saw bikers in leather dancing with children. I saw rich and poor, young and old, different races and backgrounds all choosing unity over division. and I realized something profound. A year ago, I would have called this impossible. I would have said, people don't change, communities don't transform, miracles don't happen in small towns. I would have been wrong. What I learned this year is that miracles happen every day, in every place where someone chooses courage over cowardice, love over hate, openness over closure. The miracle of Willow Creek began with one woman opening a door. It continued with 1,000 people choosing to keep that door open. May we never close it again. Nia set the journal aside and turned off her light. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was the moon shining through her window, bright and full and beautiful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new choices. But tonight, she would rest in the knowledge that she had done something that mattered. She had opened her door to strangers and found family. She had chosen kindness in a moment of fear and sparked a transformation that rippled outward beyond anything she could have imagined. And that, she thought as sleep pulled her under, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. If this story touched your heart, I want to ask you something. Don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this remind us what we're capable of when we choose compassion over fear. Leave a comment below about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, or about a time you opened your door, literally or figuratively, to help someone in need. Those stories matter. Your story matters. And don't forget to like this video so more people can discover this message. Because in a world that often feels dark and divided, we need these reminders that light still exists, that communities can heal, that strangers can become family. We need to remember that each of us has the power to be someone's miracle, just by choosing kindness, when it would be easier to choose fear. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. Be the reason someone decides to open their door instead of keeping it locked. Be the change you want to see in the world. Because that's how miracles happen. One open door at a time. One choice at a time. One act of courage at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being the kind of person who believes kindness still matters. Until next time, keep your heart open and your door unlocked. You never know what miracles might be waiting on the other side.